Have you ever stood up too fast and felt the room spin for a moment, even though you knew you were standing still? Or have you ever closed your eyes on a roller coaster and suddenly lost all sense of up and down? That uneasy feeling of your body lying to your brain is exactly what spatial disorientation feels like in the cockpit, except at altitude and at speed.
My name is Ray Altman and I'm the Chief Flight Instructor at Epic Flight Academy. Spatial disorientation is when two of your bodily systems are in disagreement. So we have the vestibular, which is your ears, the optical or your eyes, and then the somatosensory, which is your nerves and feelings essentially. So when those two, or at least two of those, are interpreting the world differently, that's when we start feeling spatial disorientation. A good example for someone who doesn't fly is if you've ever sat in a chair or spun a swing around and then you spin around a bunch and try to get up and walk and you have a hard time finding your balance. That's a great example of a spatial disorientation moment.
In this video, we will explain what spatial disorientation is, why it happens, how it affects pilots, and how to prevent it during flight. Before we begin, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more aviation tips and insights from Epic Flight Academy. Let's get started. In aviation, spatial orientation is a pilot's ability to accurately sense the aircraft's position, attitude, and motion in three-dimensional space. Spatial disorientation occurs when that perception becomes impaired, leading to dangerous misjudgments. Both the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge and the Airplane Flying Handbook identify spatial disorientation as a major aeromedical factor in accident causation. Spatial disorientation occurs when the brain receives conflicting signals from the body's sensory systems, making it difficult to sense true position or movement. Pilots depend on three systems to stay oriented: vision, proprioception from muscles and joints, also known as the somatosensory system, and the vestibular system of the inner ear. Inside the vestibular system, the semicircular canals and otolith organs detect rotation and acceleration. In poor visibility, such as clouds, darkness, or instrument meteorological conditions, these systems can disagree. This sensory conflict, also known as a vestibular mismatch, creates powerful flight illusions like the leans, graveyard spiral or spin, Coriolis illusion, somatogravic and somatogyral illusions, head up and head down illusions, the elevator illusion, and the dangerous G-excess illusion.
So spatial disorientation can really catch someone off guard, usually because we don't expect it to happen to yourself potentially. And it might happen at times that you don't think would cause spatial disorientation. A lot of times spatial disorientation is associated with low visibility conditions, but even on a perfectly visible day, you might have something causing a spatial disorientation event. So long story short, it can catch people off guard because they just might not expect it to happen to them.
Night flying adds another layer of risk. Runway lighting illusions can distort a pilot's perception of height and distance, leading to approaches that are too high or too low. Fog is especially dangerous because it can suddenly erase the horizon and ground references. When those visual cues disappear, the brain rapidly loses its primary sense of orientation, and spatial disorientation can develop within seconds. Beyond sensory illusions, several other factors can intensify spatial disorientation. False horizon and featureless terrain illusions, including black hole approaches and runway slope, width, and lighting illusions can severely distort judgment during night or low visibility landings. Environmental conditions like brownout and whiteout, especially in helicopter operations, can completely erase visual references. Flicker vertigo, triggered by flashing lights such as strobes or sunlight through rotor blades, can cause dizziness, nausea, and loss of orientation. Hypoxia can further impair brain function and worsen disorientation. Inadvertent instrument meteorological conditions occur when a VFR pilot unexpectedly loses outside visual reference. Spatial disorientation can also be associated with medical and psychological conditions, which is why pilots must meet strict health standards. There are methods pilots use to recognize and combat spatial disorientation before it becomes dangerous. Aviation authorities emphasize strong training, best practices, and solid aeronautical decision-making. Tools like the Barani chair and advanced flight simulators allow pilots to safely experience powerful illusions in a controlled environment. Training in partial panel operations, unusual attitude recovery, and disciplined instrument scanning teaches pilots to trust their attitude indicator, primary flight display, and the attitude and heading reference system, especially during instrument proficiency checks.
So flight training, since you have an instructor on board, it allows students to potentially experience disorientation and have that second person on board to keep the flight safe. It allows them to recognize and talk with their instructor about what they're feeling and how to anecdote that moment.
At Epic Flight Academy, we teach memory aids that help pilots quickly recognize vestibular and visual illusions. One of the most important is ICEFLAGS, which covers the most dangerous spatial disorientation traps. Inversion illusion is a sudden climb that can feel like tumbling backward, tempting the pilot to push the nose down. Coriolis illusion is a head movement during a turn that creates an overwhelming false spinning sensation. Elevator illusion is rapid vertical acceleration that can make the nose feel too high, leading to unsafe nose-down input. False horizon is when clouds, stars, or sloping terrain create a misleading horizon and careless aircraft alignment. The leans is a slow, unnoticed turn followed by leveling, which causes a false sensation of banking the opposite way. Autokinesis is a single stationary light that appears to move when stared at in the dark. A graveyard spiral is a prolonged, unnoticed turn which leads to a tightening descent when the pilot tries to level off. Somatogravic illusion is rapid acceleration that feels like a false nose-up pitch. This is especially dangerous during takeoff.
While flying, if you're recognizing that you're spatially disoriented at that moment, it was probably a good idea to not approach a runway or maybe even continue on that flight. You might request a hold from approach to kind of reestablish your level, and honestly let ATC know if you feel that you are disoriented, because they will also help you too.
As pilots learn to recognize the physical illusions of spatial disorientation, the next critical layer is how they make decisions when those illusions strike. Aeronautical decision-making, or ADM, is the structured process pilots use to assess risk and choose the safest course of action during flight. As outlined in the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, ADM teaches pilots to base decisions on the most accurate and current information available. Crew Resource Management, or CRM, strengthens safety through communication, teamwork, situational awareness, workload management, and error reduction. At Epic Flight Academy, CRM is a core part of our Airline Direct program with Southern Airways Express, and is now a critical element of professional pilot training. When spatial disorientation strikes, pilots are taught one simple rule: trust your instruments. Physical sensations can feel completely opposite of what the instruments show, but the instruments provide the only reliable truth. Systems like synthetic vision, autopilot and IMC, and night vision can assist, but they are not foolproof.
So generally your instruments don't lie. They're usually very accurate, and when your body feels something, we might be inclined to react to that feeling, but confirming with your instruments that that's the appropriate reaction will let you make the best decision. One of the main instruments is your attitude indicator. It's showing essentially the horizon even when you can't see it. So simply by seeing that, instead of relying on what you feel might be a bank or a climb, will allow you to kind of re-establish some situational awareness.
Spatial disorientation is also tied to poor decision-making, including planned continuation bias and get-there-itis, when pilots push on despite worsening conditions. Training emphasizes early recognition, timely go-arounds, respecting weather minimums, and avoiding VFR into IMC. At Epic, it all comes back to one guiding principle: safety first. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, about 5 to 10% of general aviation accidents involve spatial disorientation, and nearly 90% of those are fatal. In military aviation, spatial disorientation, G-force-induced loss of consciousness, or GLOC, remain leading human factor causes of fatal mishaps. One case often studied in training is Atom Air Flight 574. A navigation system malfunction distracted the crew. The autopilot disconnected, and the pilots failed to recognize the developing bank and descent. Investigators concluded that loss of control followed, with spatial disorientation listed as a key contributing factor. Another example is the 1999 crash involving John F. Kennedy Jr. near Martha's Vineyard. The National Transportation Safety Board determined the probable cause was pilot loss of control due to spatial disorientation during a night descent over water. In 2020, a Sikorsky S-76 carrying Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna Bryant, and 7 other people crashed after the pilot continued VFR into clouds. The NTSB concluded that the pilot became spatially disoriented, leading to loss of control. All 9 people on board lost their lives. This tragedy reinforced that spatial disorientation is just as deadly in helicopters as it is in airplanes.
So one key safety thing when flying when visibility is limited is trust your instruments and be familiar with the type of approaches and airports and terrain that you're going to be flying around, so that way you guarantee that you're staying away from any dangerous situations if you do become spatially disoriented.
Spatial disorientation remains a constant threat, especially during IMC, night flying, and over featureless terrain. Understanding the causes and illusions, and practicing how to manage them in training, simulators, and real flight provides situational awareness and can prevent fatal accidents. Strong aeronautical decision-making, crew resource management, and absolute trust in your instruments are essential for every pilot who wants to fly safely and confidently. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like it. It lets us know you are enjoying our content. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss more aviation tips and insights from Epic Flight Academy.